Dr. Arvind Malhotra was celebrated as a life-saving hero. Naina Malhotra trusted him with her body and her life, and Rhea believed she was loving a man trapped in a broken marriage. But behind these three names was a slow, calculated crime that unfolded silently over 2 years and ended in betrayal, poison, and death. Dr. Arvind Malhotra was admired by almost everyone who knew his name. As one of the most successful heart specialists in the city, his reputation reached far beyond hospital walls. News channels often invited him to speak about health awareness, and magazines praised his dedication to saving lives. Patients waited months just to get an appointment with him, believing his hands carried rare skill and his advice could not be questioned. In public, he appeared calm, kind, and deeply ethical, the kind of doctor families trusted without hesitation. His home reflected his success. The large, well-kept house stood in a quiet neighborhood where respected professionals lived. Charity plaques and framed awards filled the walls, telling the story of a man who had built his life on discipline and achievement. To outsiders, his life seemed perfectly balanced between career, wealth, and respect. Beside him lived his wife, Naina Malhotra. She was rarely noticed, often standing a step behind him at events, offering polite smiles while avoiding attention. She did not complain or seek praise, and many assumed she preferred a private life. Her quiet nature made her nearly invisible in a world that focused on her husband's success. What no one understood was how much trust Naina placed in her husband. She believed completely in his medical knowledge and depended on him not only as a partner, but as her guide in matters of health and safety. That trust, built over years of marriage, would soon become the most dangerous part of her life, though at the time it felt like the safest place she could be. Over time, the warmth in the marriage slowly disappeared, though there was no single moment when it broke. Dr. Malhotra became distant, speaking less and spending more nights away from home. Meals were eaten in silence, and shared routines faded into habit rather than care. Naina noticed the change, but assumed it was the pressure of his demanding career. She told herself that successful people often carried invisible burdens. Around the same period, her health began to fail in small, confusing ways. She felt tired even after long rest, suffered from frequent dizziness, and struggled to keep food down. Some mornings, her hands trembled so badly that simple tasks became difficult. Dr. Malhotra assured her these symptoms were common and temporary. Using his medical authority, he convinced her that stress and aging were the cause. Visits to outside doctors became rare. He insisted he could manage her condition better at home. New pills appeared in neatly labeled containers, and her diet was carefully controlled. He monitored her closely, recording changes and adjusting medications with precision. To others, it looked like devotion. To Naina, it felt reassuring, even when the treatments failed to bring relief. As months passed, her weakness deepened. She stopped attending social gatherings and lost contact with friends. Confined mostly to the house, she relied entirely on her husband's guidance. Her world grew smaller, shaped by exhaustion and confusion. She never suspected harm, because the person controlling every detail of her care was the same man the world praised as a healer. What felt like protection was slowly turning into a cage, built quietly within the walls of her own home. While his wife's world was shrinking, Dr. Malhotra's world was expanding in secret. Away from home and hospital corridors, he had formed a connection that fed his ego and desire. Rhea entered his life through professional circles, drawn to his confidence, wealth, and reputation. She admired the authority he carried and the way people listened when he spoke. To her, he seemed powerful yet misunderstood, a man trapped in a life that no longer made him happy. Their relationship grew quietly, hidden behind excuses and carefully planned absences. Dr. Malhotra presented himself as a victim of an emotionally empty marriage, burdened by responsibility and sacrifice. He spoke of loneliness, long years of duty, and dreams delayed by obligation. Rhea believed his words without question, seeing herself as the person who brought color back into his life. They met in private spaces far from his neighborhood, places where no one knew his wife or asked questions. He promised a future that sounded close but never arrived. Each delay was explained as temporary, each obstacle framed as unavoidable. Rhea trusted his intelligence and assumed every decision was carefully thought out. What she never realized was that his careful planning extended far beyond secrecy. To Dr. Malhotra, the affair was not just passion but motivation. He had begun to imagine a life without Naina, one where his reputation remained intact and his desires were fulfilled. In his mind, love and ambition merged into a single goal. The plan forming beneath his calm surface was cold, deliberate, and already moving forward, hidden behind charm, patience, and a flawless public image. The changes in Naina's health followed a pattern that only one person fully understood. Her condition worsened slowly, never dramatic enough to cause immediate alarm. Some weeks she could walk through the house with ease, while other days she struggled to lift a glass of water. The symptoms shifted constantly, confusing every test and masking the true cause. This uncertainty worked in Dr. Malhotra's favor, allowing him to control both the illness and the narrative around it. Using his medical knowledge, he chose substances that blended seamlessly into her existing symptoms. Each dose was carefully measured, designed to weaken rather than kill. He knew how the body responded to long-term exposure and how to stay just below the line that would raise suspicion. The poison entered her system disguised as treatment, mixed into food, drinks, or pills she trusted without fear. Naina believed her body was failing her. She apologized often for being unwell, unaware that her suffering was being engineered. Dr. Malhotra observed her closely, adjusting amounts when her condition stabilized too much or when recovery seemed possible. What appeared to be attentive care was actually constant surveillance. The slow pace served a purpose. A sudden death would invite questions, but a long decline felt natural. Over months, then years, her strength faded. Her voice softened, her movements slowed, and her presence in the world grew faint. All the while, Dr. Malhotra remained calm and patient, waiting for the illness he created to reach its final stage, confident that no one would ever suspect the truth hidden in plain sight. When Naina finally passed away, the event unfolded quietly, almost gently, as if the long struggle had simply reached its natural end. The official cause of death reflected complications from an unresolved illness, a conclusion that seemed reasonable after years of visible decline. Dr. Malhotra handled every detail with precision, informing relatives, arranging rituals, and presenting himself as a man exhausted by grief. His controlled sadness appeared genuine, and few questioned it. Public sympathy followed quickly. Colleagues praised his devotion, recalling how he had balanced a demanding career with the care of a sick spouse. Donations were made in Naina's name, and messages of support filled his phone. The image of a respected doctor who had lost his wife after years of sacrifice was widely accepted. Yet beneath the surface, small inconsistencies lingered. Some medical records did not fully explain the damage to Naina's organs. The progression of her illness appeared uneven, improving at times when deterioration was expected. A medical examiner reviewing the case felt an unease that could not be ignored. Her symptoms, when examined carefully, did not align with a single known disease. Rather than closing the file quickly, samples were quietly preserved. Additional tests were ordered without public notice. The process was slow, cautious, and invisible to those attending memorial services and offering condolences. While the city moved on, a silent investigation had begun, driven by doubt rather than accusation. What seemed like a peaceful ending to a tragic illness was slowly being re-examined, piece by piece, as science began to question a story everyone else had already accepted as final. As the investigation deepened, attention shifted from Naina's illness to the environment in which it unfolded. Medical records were reviewed line by line, revealing prescriptions that did not match her diagnosed condition. Certain medications appeared repeatedly despite offering no clear benefit. Their presence raised concerns, especially because they were rarely prescribed together. The pattern suggested careful planning rather than medical confusion. Financial and pharmacy records added another layer. Purchases were made under Dr. Malhotra's name, often from different locations to avoid attention. Some substances were uncommon outside specialized medical use. Investigators noted that only someone with advanced knowledge could obtain and handle them safely over long periods. Daily routines also came under scrutiny. Security footage from nearby buildings showed Dr. Malhotra returning home late at night more often than he had admitted. In several recordings, he entered the kitchen alone and stayed for extended periods. These moments aligned closely with sudden declines in Naina's health the following day. Though each detail seemed minor alone, together they formed a disturbing pattern. Personal records revealed more secrets. Travel logs, hotel bookings, and digital communication pointed toward a hidden relationship. Investigators realized that Naina's isolation was not accidental. Her shrinking social circle and limited access to outside care now appeared intentional. The image of a devoted husband began to unravel. The same discipline that built Dr. Malhotra's career appeared to have been used to control every variable in his home. What once looked like care now appeared calculated. By assembling fragments from medicine, movement, and motive, authorities began to see a clear and chilling truth forming behind his carefully maintained reputation. The final confirmation arrived quietly through laboratory results that could no longer be dismissed. Toxicology tests revealed traces of multiple substances in Naina's system, each present in amounts too small to cause immediate harm, but significant enough to explain her long decline. The combination pointed clearly toward deliberate, repeated exposure rather than environmental accident or misdiagnosis. The timeline matched her worsening condition with unsettling accuracy. With evidence now solid, authorities moved carefully. Dr. Malhotra's status meant the arrest had to be precise and controlled. He was taken into custody without warning, away from cameras and public spaces. Within hours, the news broke, spreading rapidly across the city and beyond. Shock replaced admiration as headlines questioned how a man trusted with saving lives could be responsible for such calculated harm. Hospitals acted swiftly, distancing themselves from his name. Awards were removed, scheduled appearances canceled, and professional boards suspended his license. Former colleagues expressed disbelief, struggling to reconcile the man they knew with the evidence presented. Patients who once praised him now felt betrayed. The hidden relationship also surfaced, drawing intense public attention. The woman he planned to build a future with disappeared from public view, overwhelmed by scrutiny. Investigators made it clear that the crime had been planned long before Naina's final days. As the case moved toward trial, Dr. Malhotra's carefully built image collapsed completely. The calm authority he once carried meant nothing in the face of facts. The arrest marked not just the end of a life of freedom, but the exposure of a darkness that had lived undetected behind respect, intelligence, and control. The trial ended without drama, but its impact was lasting. The evidence presented left no space for doubt, laying out years of calculated actions carried out with patience and precision. Medical records, toxicology reports, and timelines formed a clear path from intention to outcome. The court focused on facts rather than emotion, exposing how trust had been carefully manipulated over time. Dr. Malhotra received a life sentence, and with it, complete erasure from the world he once controlled. His name disappeared from medical journals, hospitals, and public memory, replaced by a case study discussed in whispers. The man once praised as a healer became a symbol of how knowledge can be twisted when guided by greed and desire. Naina's life, once overshadowed, gained meaning through truth. Her suffering was no longer misunderstood as illness, but recognized as endurance under betrayal. The silence she lived in became the strongest evidence of the crime committed against her. Though justice arrived too late to save her, it restored dignity to her story. The case changed how institutions viewed unchecked authority. Safeguards were tightened, and long-term unexplained illnesses received greater scrutiny. It reminded society that evil does not always appear violent or chaotic. Sometimes it hides behind calm behavior, respect, and professional success. In the end, this story served as a warning. Trust without question can become dangerous, and appearances can be carefully crafted lies. The legacy left behind was not one of love or achievement, but a lesson written in suffering, patience, and the quiet strength of truth finally uncovered.